I want to tell you a story about paying forward. You know, sometimes you get an opportunity to do it and sometimes you don't. I got mine while I was in the service. When I was a lieutenant in the service, there was no war. Korean War was over. So if you see a picture of me when I came out, there was nothing here on my chest. No fruit salad. But I did get a chance to do a pay forward. When I got sent over, I was in the tanks. Sent over from my school to the armor school to a training regiment. And when you're in a training regiment, you do the same training over and over and over to trainees, about an 8-week deal. So I spent about 4 months in the mud and in the snow, and I had gone to a couple of parties with the colonel, regimental commander, and he said, I want to take you up to my staff. I like the way you sing Danny Boy, and I like the way you recite Gunga Din. So after 4 months, he pulled me up on his staff as the S2, Regimental Intelligence Officer. One of the things I was doing was athletic and recreation officer. That meant basketball, football, soccer, wrestling, you know, a lot of things I didn't know anything about, boxing. But I had a sergeant there, and he had fought his way through two wars, through the Second World War and the Korean War, as a tanker. He had 18 years in, and he had about 2 years till he got out. And Virgil was his name. We call him Curly. In fact, we have a book over here that tells his story, and I'm going to tell his story. We did a book about Curly. Virgil and I wrote this book, and it was, you know, a typical shutterfly of all the things that Curly did for me. Here's a picture of him. You'll see it in a tank. There was so much that I didn't know that he helped me with. One day he came into me and said, "Lieutenant, would you mind if I took 3 softballs out of inventory?" And I said, "Hey, softball season is over, help yourself." About 3 weeks later, Curly came in with a 5-pound can of coffee under his arm. And he said, "I traded it to the mess sergeant for 3 softballs. Well, there's little kids that like to play softball." I said, "What the heck are you going to do with that?" He said, "I'm going to take it out to the tank range and trade it out there." He said, "But I have to get out there. I need a Jeep." I had no problem. Pick up the phone, talk to the motor pool. "Hey, I need a Jeep up at 2nd Training Regiment." And the guy on the other end says, "Sorry, I can't get you a Jeep. All the fat butt lieutenants got them." I said, "What?" I said, "Do you know who this is calling?" And he said, "No." "Do you know who this is?" And I said, "This is Lieutenant." Told him my name. And he said, "Oh, goodbye, fat butt." And he hung up on me. Okay. So then I said, "I'm going to get back at this guy." I knew the regimental commander was out of town. So I called up there again, or I had Curly call and say, "This is the Sergeant Major at 2nd Training Regiment. I need the Colonel's Jeep up here." Of course, they kept that all spotless. And they dropped that up in about 4 minutes. And Curly and I piled into it. I was driving because I was a lieutenant, and drove out to the tank range. Now, tank range is where they make targets out 2 miles in the boondocks, where there's a crew of sergeants out there, and they don't get anything to eat or drink out there. So that's where Curly knew, and he was bringing out the 5-pound can of coffee. And he traded it to them for what's called target cloth, and it's 10 by 10, and you can buy it in a roll, and they make targets out of it, 10 by 10. I took it home in the back of the Jeep, and Curly disappeared with it. Okay. A couple of months later, he says, "Can you come up to the pistol range?" Up to the pistol range. I said, "Yeah, I come up to the pistol." I go up there, and he's got about 1,000 rounds of .45 ammunition, which he put in the back of my car. Curly knew of a guy who had a pistol range on the regimental property, and he had a use for this, and he would trade for it. See, what Curly was doing was bartering. People know that the sergeants are what makes the Army work, and a lot of it they do through bartering. So bartering got from softballs to can of coffee, to target cloth, to ammunition, because I got traded for the ammunition. By the way, I'm wearing my cavalry hat. We didn't have to buy a horse when we got to the cavalry. We had 20 tanks, so you didn't have to pay for the 20 tanks. If you lost one of those tanks, you did have to pay for it. The sergeant up at the range had a candidate from the trainee crew that he was going to train up to be a candidate for national finals. The kid got pulled away and sent to Germany. The sergeant was stuck with all this ammunition he had requisitioned. So Curly got it. A couple of weeks later, Curly says, "I need a ride out to a place near my farm." Let me tell you something. Curly had inherited a 40-acre farm near to the Fort Knox. And wait a minute. I'll change my hat. I put my farmer hat on. So he said, "I've got this 100 rounds of ammunition. I want to get it out to my farm, but I can't put it in my car because at the MPs will search you at the gate." I said, "They don't search me." I said, "I'll do you a favor." So got in the car, drove through high to the MP, and we went out to a farm near his farm. He had a 40-acre farm, but he didn't know what to do with it. He inherited it from somebody. So we got out to this farm, a real farm, and there was this buddy, the farmer, and he got out of the car and walked over to the man, and they were talking over there. And I said, "Oh, I wonder what that's about." About 15 minutes later, he came over to the car. He and the farmer took 1,000 rounds of ammunition out of the back of my trunk, and we drove back to the base. Curly came in and he was skipping and dancing. He said, "I traded that ammunition for a pig who's about to have piglets, and don't you know, I've got 8 piglets. Lieutenant," he said, "I am now a pig farmer. I know what I'm going to do when I get out. I'm going to be a big old pig farmer." And that's what I did. I took Curly from 3 softballs, he took himself, to a pig farmer. And I let him do it because I wanted to pay him forward for fighting in the wars when I was just a baby or a high school kid. That's called paying it forward. If any of you folks have a story out there about paying forward, I'd be interested to hear it, because I tell you what, it gives you a warm feeling in your heart when you do it. Thanks so much for listening. God love you. I know Curly was happy. You could tell just from thinking about his pig farm. But about 2 weeks later, he came in with some rabbit, all dressed out, and he gave us a recipe how to cook it, milk it, bread it, put it in a golden frying pan. Do you remember doing that, Mersey?
I do.
And it came out golden brown, but there was one thing about the rabbit. We didn't tell Curly that in New Jersey, we don't eat little bunnies. So it kind of went to waste. So that's all I have to say about that story. God bless you all.